Hey everyone, it's great to be with you here at the Future Human event. I'm going to share with you some of my thoughts on the future of emerging technology. Emerging technology, the way to think of it is a new upcoming technology that has not taken hold yet, but might have profound implications in how we live and how we work. So I want to tell you a little bit about the future, but I want to first start with a story about the past. So a very long time ago, or what feels like a very long time ago, just 10 years ago now, two emerging technologies came into contact. And those emerging technologies were 4G mobile connectivity and online social media platforms. Now, what resulted, some people say that no one could have predicted this. But a part of my argument in this talk is that I think there is a way to predict this, and I think there is a way to collaborate across disciplines such that you can think about these consequences and build technology that takes our humanity at the center of all considerations. Out of these collision of these two emerging technologies just 10 years ago, we've had a global pandemic of digital loneliness and a global pandemic of fake news. So I think a lot about that, and I think a lot about the past and how the past might inform the future and how the future might be different. And a big question I have about the future is what happens if 10 or more of these emerging technologies collide? What profound implications might that have for the way we live and the way we work? I have a prediction that in 2030, about 10 of these technologies are going to take hold in the world. These technologies that you might have heard, some of them are the likes of 5G communications technology, machine learning, artificial intelligence, augmented reality, virtual reality, quantum computation, blockchain, edge computing, sensing technology through Internet of Things, robots and drones. And then those emerging technologies lead to these emerging platform technologies such as autonomous vehicles and digital twins and mirror worlds. And that's just to name a few. So if digital loneliness and fake news, to name just two negative consequences out of the combination of two emerging technologies just 10 years ago, what might happen with the combination of 10 of these technologies in 10 years' time? We have to ask the question, what negative effect might this have on our humanity and on humanity itself? And who are asking these questions and who are going to develop solutions to address these problems before they become problems? So this is a critical part of the type of work I do. And this is a core theme in this presentation that I want to try and share with you around this line of thinking and how we might address some of these concerns. Now, there is one possible solution, at least in my experience and through the work that I currently lead, and that's with a combination of art and engineering and science to humanize technology. So I'm going to talk a lot about humanizing technology. I'll explain what that means a little bit later. But before that, I'm going to give you some examples of the work that we do with artists in projects that combine many of these emerging technologies. And I want to share with you some of the lessons we've learned from that. I'm not going to go into it here in this talk, but if you want to learn more about the work we do fusing art and technology, please just Google search Bell Labs EAT, Experiments in Art and Technology, and you'll get a sense of the breadth of collaborations and projects we have with a range of artists all over the world. So let's take a few examples here. What about the collision of robotics plus sensing technology plus machine learning and AI? So if this was left to the technologists alone, you get technology like what we see here in this particular slide. We have this very dystopian utilitarian approach to robotics, excuse me, which is a little bit scary on the one hand when it's industrial robotics, or when you have these robots that look like animals, or equally you have this kind of creepy approach where robots are anthropomorphized or made to be human-like. Now, I don't think that any of these are the best solutions to take into account our humanity. So the question is, what's the alternative and what can we learn from that? So with an artist, Su Gwen Chung, we've worked with her on an approach around drawing collaborations with robots and using robots plus sensing technology in smart cities, plus machine vision technology within machine learning and AI, and her humanity and her creativity, we were able to learn that taking the best of technology with the best of with humanity and her creativity provides the best solution to how we can think about true benefits to our humanity. Another project, an artist we worked with is an artist called Fei Liu, and that project was called Raising Emotional Robots. We haven't released this publicly yet. We hope to do that early next year. But in this project, she is investigating how you build emotional connections between humans and the technology that we might use, and how you do that in a much more human-centric way. That's not necessarily to say that you develop the robots to look like humanoids. It can mean very different things, and our exploration of that has been very insightful to us in how we think about our technology. Here's another project examples around the collision of virtual reality, augmented reality, machine learning, artificial intelligence, and sensing technology. And as you can see on the left, here's some examples. If things were left to technologists alone, we'd live in this very technological dystopian scenario, which I've described in the past, looking at digital zombies, where we're expected to wear this very clunky virtual reality headsets and haptic gloves for us to interact with the virtual world. We've worked with a couple of artists to explore alternatives to this. One is Lisa Park, where people enter this space and we sense how they come into physical contact. And when they touch each other in different ways, this cherry blossom holographic projection blooms in front of them. And through this work and the work with Lisa and how we've observed people interact with this piece, we've learned about the importance of physical connection in the human condition. And we've thought a lot about, if we develop technology to connect people at a distance, how do we not try and replicate that virtually, but how might we instill and build in those deeply human-centric principles into the technology from day one? Another example is with Kalle, an artist from Helsinki, and this is a project we did in collaboration with the Finnish National Opera. This was shown publicly just a couple of months ago. It's a piece called Common Domain, and the whole idea here is, how do you allow people into the virtual world without this necessity of wearing these clunky VR goggles and haptic gloves like I show on the left-hand side of this screen? So he came up with very interesting concepts on how to allow people to navigate in the virtual world in unique emotional ways without having this cumbersome VR technology attached to their head, which is very, you could call, inhumane. Last project that I give as an example is in the area of machine learning, artificial intelligence, plus sensing technology and augmented reality. And, you know, when you think about augmented or artificial intelligence or augmented intelligence, there's a lot of negative discourse in the popular media around algorithms and robots taking our jobs and AI becoming super intelligent and maybe squashing humanity and all this kind of, honestly, what I think is nonsense. There's a lot of ill-informed people writing and speaking about the consequences of this technology. And that's not to say that we shouldn't consider the negative effects, but at the same time, I see far greater positive gains from this technology if it's developed the right way for all people. So to give you a couple of examples of work we've done here, this work was shown at the Inspire Fest stage in the past. It's with a beatboxer called Reaps1. It's a project called Second Self, and we wanted to show that we could develop machine learning and artificial intelligence technology that could enhance human creativity. And through this project with Reaps1, we developed this concept called Second Self, which is a beatboxing digital twin of him. And he was able to collaborate with his digital twin, and since being able to collaborate with it, he is what he's called leveled up his voice. So he's been able to take his voice, the skills, the sounds he makes, or the way he composes, to a whole new level beyond which he ever thought he could achieve, because he's had this ability to interact with a second self. And we've thought about this, you know, if we can help one of the most creative people in the world be more creative, then what might this technology do for the rest of humanity if it's built for everyone in the right way? And then the final project I'll share with you on the benefits of the collision and how we've examined the collision of some of these emerging technologies with an artist called Stephanie Dinkins. This project is called Secret Gardening, and it won't go live until early next year, but it's around telling the intergenerational stories of Black women and how we can use these emerging immersive technologies to bring people to this work and to help them explore these narratives in different and more interesting ways. So in those examples, you'll see, and you heard me talk a little bit about the negative discourse in the popular media, there's often this narrative around human versus machine. And I think this is completely incorrect. I don't think it's the right way of looking at this at all. I, in fact, think that it's human and machine, or human times machine. How can you take the best of humanity with the best of technology, bring them together, and leverage and build better things for humanity by bringing these two worlds together? This is critically important. A very good lens to view this through, or to think about this, is the lens of humanizing technology. So I want to share with you some of my perspectives on what humanizing technology is. And hopefully you can leave this talk having that in the back of your mind and thinking about how you can bring this principle into your own R&D or your own technology development. So for me, humanizing technology is acknowledging that humanity has evolved for hundreds of thousands of years. We have invented and co-evolved with technology. So, please don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating that we don't develop technology. I love technology. I'm a technologist. Our progress as humanity has completely been coupled to and required technological evolution. But at the same time, we have to understand that there are things about our humanity that are built in. We have innate characteristics and attributes that are core to the human condition that I believe have been hard coded into our DNA for hundreds of thousands of years. And we shouldn't just dispel them with the advent of technology. So, for example, in recent times, we've rapidly moved away from some of those core things that most make us human. And this has come about with the acceleration of digital technology in the last 20 years or so. So think about some of the things that most make us human: being in physical proximity with other humans, emotional connection within the particular tribe you might be in, how you might have leveraged your hands to manipulate matter in the past, and think about how we've moved much of our existence to the virtual and the digital, and how we very quickly, rapidly moved away from some of those core traits of our humanity. And I'd ask you to think about that and then think about your role in business, in technology, and as leaders, and start considering some of these concepts around humanizing technology, the technology you're developing, and ask the question, how might this technology help or harm humanity in the future? Not just in the next year, but in the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. These are the questions I believe we should be asking. So let's talk about some implications for emerging technology before we wrap up. This might be a little bit more focused on machine learning and AI, but I think it's applicable to all of the emerging technologies, given the prevalence of machine learning and AI and how that will be integrated with all these other emerging tech fields. So ask questions like, can data ever capture our humanity? And if data can't capture our humanity, then what are the negative consequences of moving algorithms into the world that are based on limited, biased, or bad data? And that limited, biased, or bad data might not ever come close to capturing our humanity. And therefore, what harm might that do in the real world? Let's think a little bit about automation. Is it always a good thing? I think there's sometimes automation is good. I think there's lots of times automation isn't good. But who's asking the questions around if automation is good or bad, and what the harm to our humanity might be if we go down too far down a path of automation? I think a lot about the combination of humanity and technology, and what can we do that is better with the combination, and in what applications is that the right question to ask, and to have that combination versus human only or machine only. And I think a lot about how much productivity and efficiency gains could we achieve if we used emerging technology to enhance human creativity. So instead of thinking about how we replace humans or replicate humans, how might we enhance or augment humans and enhance their creativity, which is one of the most core human conditions that there is. So I think a lot about these kind of things. So what I'll do is leave you with a couple of questions. Who will develop humanized technology? Who's going to think about it? Who's going to think about these risks with the collision of these emerging technologies in the future? Who's going to be brave enough to develop technology that is humanized and takes the human condition at its core? And is the fusion of art and technology the answer, or is it a strong initial answer or starting point? In my view and my experience from the work I've done with artists, they've opened up my mind as a trained engineer, as a technologist, in different ways of thinking about the intersection of technology and humanity. And I could not have ever thought that way only for my collaborations with the artistic community. So from my perspective, I think the fusion of art and technology is a very strong leading approach to take if you want to consider our humanity in these future technologies. So with that, what I'd like to do is leave it there. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the organizers. Glad to be part of this Future Human event. And you can follow our work online or reach out to me directly if you want to follow up on any of these topics. Thank you.